Your grandmother probably ran away." The words landed harder than the cold rain tapping against the front windows of the precinct. For a moment, 10-year-old Nia Carter thought she had heard the officer wrong. She stood perfectly still in front of the tall reception desk, her small fingers clutching a wrinkled missing person flyer. Water dripped from the edge of her oversized gray hoodie onto the polished floor beneath her sneakers. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly, filling the silence that followed. Then laughter broke out. Not loud laughter. Not cruel enough to draw attention. Just a few amused chuckles from the people nearby. Enough. Enough to make Nia's stomach tighten. Officer Ryan Mercer leaned back in his chair and folded his arms across his Navy uniform. "Look, kid," he said, shaking his head. "Older people leave all the time. Maybe she needed some space." Another officer glanced up from a computer monitor before returning to his paperwork. A woman waiting to file a report shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Nobody said anything. Nobody stepped in. Nia swallowed hard and looked down at the photograph on the flyer. Evelyn Carter smiled back at her from the paper. 68 years old. Silver hair. Warm brown eyes. The woman who packed her lunches every morning. The woman who sat through every school recital. The woman who never forgot a birthday. Missing for 3 days. 3 days and 11 hours, to be exact. Nia knew because she had counted every hour. "My grandmother wouldn't leave," she said quietly. Her voice barely rose above the hum of the lights. Officer Mercer sighed as if he had already heard the same argument 100 times. "That's what everyone says." Nia felt her cheeks grow warm. Outside, rain streaked down the glass entrance doors, turning the afternoon into a blur of gray and silver. She remembered the last time she had seen her grandmother. The old woman had been standing in their tiny kitchen, sunlight pouring through the curtains, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She had seemed distracted, nervous. She kept glancing toward the window. Then she had crouched beside Nia and squeezed her shoulder. "If anything ever happens to me," she had said softly, "don't let anyone tell you to stop asking questions." At the time, Nia thought it was strange. Now the memory refused to leave her. She was scared, Nia said. Before she disappeared, Officer Mercer rolled his eyes toward the ceiling. Scared of what? Nia hesitated. The answer sounded ridiculous even to her. "I don't know." "Exactly." He spread his hands. "You don't know." The station seemed to shrink around her. Phones rang somewhere deeper inside the building. A printer spit out pages. A television, mounted in the corner, quietly played local news. Life moved on as if Evelyn Carter had never existed. As if she were just another name on another piece of paper. Nia tightened her grip on the flyer. "Please," she whispered. "You have to look." Officer Mercer stared at her for a second before letting out a slow breath. Then a faint smile crept across his face. Not kind. Not reassuring. Dismissive. "Sweetheart," he said, reaching for a stack of forms. "There are real emergencies happening today." The room fell silent again. Nia looked around. Every adult avoided her eyes. Every adult except one elderly janitor pushing a cart near the hallway. He paused briefly, watching her with quiet concern before continuing on. The wheels squeaked against the floor. Nia lowered her gaze. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it in her ears. But then she remembered something else. Something her grandmother had pressed into her hand 2 weeks earlier. A folded piece of paper with a phone number written across it in blue ink. Suddenly, her fingers slipped into the pocket of her hoodie. And for the first time since walking into the station, she stopped feeling helpless. Nia slowly pulled the folded paper from her hoodie pocket and stared at the blue ink that had begun to fade along the creases. She had looked at that number dozens of times over the past 3 days, but until now it had felt like nothing more than a strange instruction from a worried grandmother. The paper trembled slightly between her fingers. Across the room, Officer Mercer had already returned his attention to a stack of reports. To him, the conversation was over. To Nia, it was only beginning. She unfolded the paper carefully. Beneath the phone number, Evelyn Carter had written 6 words in neat handwriting. "If nobody listens, call this line." Nia remembered the afternoon she received it. Her grandmother had returned from town carrying 2 grocery bags and wearing an expression Nia had never seen before. Not fear exactly. Caution. The older woman had checked the front window twice before sitting at the kitchen table. The smell of cornbread filled the tiny apartment while sunlight stretched across the worn linoleum floor. "Grandma, what is that?" Nia had asked. Evelyn had folded the paper and pressed it into her hand. Just keep it somewhere safe. What is it for? Evelyn hesitated. Then she smiled, but it was not her usual smile. Hopefully nothing. Back in the present, Nia looked around the station again. Nobody seemed interested in her anymore. A ringing phone sounded from a nearby office. Someone laughed at a joke she could not hear. Outside, rain continued to slide down the glass doors in silver streams. It felt impossible that the world could continue so normally while her grandmother remained missing. Nia moved toward a row of plastic chairs against the wall and sat down. The seat felt cold beneath her. She reached into her backpack and removed her old cell phone. The screen was scratched near the corner, and the battery rarely lasted through an entire day, but it still worked. She glanced once more toward Officer Mercer. He did not even look up. Slowly, she typed the number. Her thumb hovered above the call button. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Not fear. Not exactly. It felt more like standing at the edge of a diving board, knowing there was no way to know what waited below until you jumped. She pressed call. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Nia expected a recording. Maybe a voicemail. Maybe nothing at all. Instead, the line clicked. A calm woman's voice answered immediately. Government Oversight Office. This line is recorded. How may I assist you today? Nia blinked. Her heart skipped. She lowered the phone slightly and checked the number again. It was correct. Hello, the woman repeated. Nia swallowed hard. My name is Nia Carter, she said quietly. My grandmother disappeared 3 days ago. There was a brief pause on the other end. Then the woman's voice changed. It became sharper, more focused. Did you say Carter? Nia sat up straighter. Yes, ma'am. Papers shuffled somewhere beyond the line. A keyboard clicked rapidly. Then came a sentence that made every sound inside the station seem to disappear. Stay exactly where you are, Nia. We have been trying to locate your grandmother for weeks. Nia gripped the phone so tightly that her knuckles turned pale beneath the station lights. For a moment, she wondered if she had heard the woman correctly. Trying to locate her grandmother for weeks. The words echoed through her mind. Across the lobby, Officer Mercer remained behind the reception desk, flipping through paperwork without a second glance in her direction. He had no idea that everything had just changed. What do you mean? Nia asked quietly. The voice on the line remained calm and professional. Nia, I need you to listen carefully. Is there an adult with you right now? Nia looked around the room. The waiting area felt larger than before, colder somehow. No, ma'am. There was a brief pause. More keyboard clicks sounded in the background. All right. Are you currently at the Westbrook Police Department? Nia's eyes widened. Yes, ma'am. Good. Stay there. Do not leave the building. A strange chill ran down her spine. Rain continued tapping against the glass entrance doors while traffic passed outside in blurred streaks of red and white lights. Please tell me where my grandmother is, Nia whispered. The woman hesitated. I cannot discuss everything over the phone, but your grandmother's name appears in an active government file. Nia stopped breathing for a second. An active government file. Evelyn Carter had spent most of her life working as a school secretary. She volunteered at church on weekends. She baked peach cobbler for neighbors. Nothing about her grandmother sounded like government business. There has to be a mistake, Nia said. My grandmother does not work for the government. No, the woman replied softly. But sometimes ordinary people see things that become very important. Nia remembered the nervous look on her grandmother's face 2 weeks earlier. The repeated glances toward the window. The folded paper. Suddenly those memories no longer felt random. They felt connected. Behind the desk, Officer Mercer stood and walked toward the coffee machine near the hallway. His relaxed posture made Nia feel even smaller. He still believed she was wasting everyone's time. What happens now? She asked. Someone is coming to meet you. From where? The Office of Government Oversight. Nia had never heard those words before. They sounded important. Serious. Adult. The woman lowered her voice slightly. Nia, has anyone asked you about a flash drive? Nia froze. Her backpack sat beside her chair. Inside, tucked into a zippered compartment, was a small silver flash drive she had discovered in her grandmother's bedroom the night she disappeared. Evelyn had hidden it inside an old recipe box beneath dozens of handwritten index cards. Nia had almost forgotten about it. How did you know about that? She asked. Silence filled the line for a moment. Then the woman answered carefully. Because your grandmother was supposed to deliver it to us 3 days ago. Nia stared across the station. Everything suddenly felt sharper. The humming lights. The ringing telephones. The squeak of shoes on polished floors. 3 days ago was the exact morning Evelyn vanished. Nia slowly unzipped her backpack and reached inside. Her fingers wrapped around the cool metal drive. It felt heavier than something so small should feel. Do not show it to anyone, the woman said immediately. Keep it with you until our investigators arrive. Nia glanced toward Officer Mercer again. At that exact moment, the officer looked up from across the room and noticed the expression on her face. His confident smile faded slightly. For the first time all afternoon, he seemed curious about what was happening. Officer Ryan Mercer narrowed his eyes from across the lobby. The little girl who had arrived soaked from the rain and carrying a missing person flyer no longer looked defeated. She sat straighter now, one hand gripping her phone and the other resting. Inside her backpack, something had changed. He walked slowly back toward the reception desk, carrying his coffee cup. Everything all right over there? He asked casually. Nia looked up, but did not answer immediately. The woman on the phone had warned her to be careful. Keep the flash drive with you. Do not show it to anyone. The words echoed in her mind. Yes, sir, she said quietly. Mercer studied her face for a moment before setting his cup down. You still talking to family? Nia glanced at the phone screen. The call remained active. No, sir. For the first time, a faint crease appeared between his eyebrows. Before he could ask another question, the woman on the line spoke again. Nia, I need you to listen carefully. Nia turned slightly away from the desk. Yes, ma'am. Our records show your grandmother contacted our office twice within the last month. Nia's heart pounded faster. Why? She believed she had discovered evidence connected to misuse of public funds. The words sounded complicated, but Nia understood enough. Money. Important money. Money that did not belong to someone. Suddenly, she remembered several late nights when Evelyn sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. She had claimed she was organizing church records. Now Nia was not so sure. Did she tell you what she found? Nia asked. No. She only said she was gathering documentation. The station felt strangely quiet. Even the television in the corner seemed distant. And the flash drive? Nia whispered. We believe the information is on that device. A cold sensation moved through her chest. Such a tiny object. Such a big secret. Across the room, Mercer pretended to read a report, but his attention kept drifting toward her. Nia could feel it. The woman continued. Our investigators are already on their way. How long? Approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes felt like forever. Nia looked toward the front doors. Rain still covered the glass in shimmering patterns. Headlights slid across the parking lot outside. What if they do not get here in time? She asked. They will. The answer came immediately. Confident. Certain. Then another voice appeared briefly in the background of the call, speaking too softly for Nia to understand. Papers shuffled. Someone gave instructions. The woman returned. Nia, there is one more thing. Yes, ma'am. Your grandmother specifically requested that if anything happened to her, we contact you. Nia felt her throat tighten. For 3 days, she had tried to stay brave. For 3 days, she had searched every possibility, called neighbors, checked hospitals, and walked streets she normally avoided. But hearing those words made everything feel real. Evelyn had known something might happen. She had prepared for it. Why me? Nia asked softly. The answer came after a brief pause. Because according to her file, you are the person she trusted most in the world. Nia lowered her eyes toward the floor. The fluorescent lights reflected faintly off the polished tiles. She tightened her grip around the flash drive hidden inside her backpack. Then the front doors opened. A gust of cool air swept into the station. Several people looked up, and standing just inside the entrance was a woman in a dark government jacket carrying a leather folder with the words Office of Government Oversight printed across the front. The woman stepped fully into the station, raindrops glistening across the shoulders of her dark jacket. Conversations faded almost immediately. Something about her presence carried weight. Not loud, not dramatic, simply undeniable. She scanned the room once before her eyes settled on Nia. Nia Carter? She asked. Nia rose from the plastic chair. Yes, ma'am. The woman nodded and approached. Up close, she appeared to be in her early 40s, with calm eyes and a composed expression that reminded Nia of teachers who never needed to raise their voices to command a classroom. My name is Inspector Helen Graves. She extended a hand. Thank you for staying here. Nia shook it carefully. Across the lobby, Officer Mercer straightened in his chair. Can I help you? He called. Helen turned toward him and reached into her jacket pocket. A silver credential appeared. Mercer took one look at it and immediately stood. Inspector, he said, his tone noticeably different. I was not informed anyone from your office was coming. You were not supposed to be, Helen replied. The station fell quiet again. Even the officers working nearby seemed suddenly interested in their computer screens. Helen shifted her attention back to Nia. Do you have the item your grandmother left behind? Nia hesitated only a second before reaching into her backpack. She carefully removed the flash drive. Helen's eyes locked onto it instantly. Not excitement. Relief. The kind of relief people feel after searching for something important for a very long time. May I? She asked. Nia remembered the warning from the woman on the phone. Do not give it to anyone except our investigators. She nodded and placed it in Helen's hand. The inspector examined it briefly before slipping it into a protective evidence pouch. Good, she said quietly. Very good. Mercer stepped around the desk. Can someone tell me what exactly is happening? Helen looked at him. An active investigation. Into what? That information is restricted. Mercer frowned. With all due respect, this is my jurisdiction. Helen's expression remained calm. Not anymore. The words hung in the air. Nia watched the officer's face tighten. It was the first time all afternoon that he seemed uncertain. Helen opened her leather folder and reviewed several pages. 3 weeks ago, Evelyn Carter contacted our office regarding irregularities involving community development funds. Nia listened carefully. She believed money intended for schools, food programs, and senior assistance services was being redirected. Mercer folded his arms. That is a serious accusation, which is why we investigated. Helen closed the folder, and we discovered enough evidence to continue. Nia felt her pulse quicken. Her grandmother had been telling the truth all along. She had not imagined anything. She had not been confused. She had found something real. Helen crouched slightly, so her eyes were level with Nia's. Your grandmother was brave. The simple sentence nearly brought tears to Nia's eyes. Do you know where she is? She asked. For the first time, Helen hesitated. Not long, just enough for Nia to notice. We know she was alive when she made her last contact. With us. The answer was careful. Too careful. Nia's heart sank. And now, Helen looked toward the rain-covered windows. The parking lot lights shimmered across the wet pavement outside. Now, she said softly, we are hoping the information on that flash drive tells us what happened next. The station felt different after that. The laughter was gone. The casual conversations had faded into whispers. Even the steady rhythm of ringing phones seemed quieter somehow. Nia sat in the same plastic chair while Inspector Helen Graves moved to a nearby conference room with the evidence pouch. Through the glass wall, Nia could see silhouettes shifting back and forth beneath the bright ceiling lights. Papers changed hands. Laptop screens glowed. Serious faces studied serious information. For the first time in 3 days, adults were finally paying attention. Outside, the rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle. Water rolled down the windows in thin silver lines, catching reflections from passing headlights. Nia rested her hands in her lap and watched the storm begin to fade. Her grandmother always loved rain. Evelyn used to say rain made people slow down long enough to notice what really mattered. The memory made Nia smile for only a second before worry returned. Somewhere in the city, her grandmother was still missing. Somewhere, answers existed. The question was whether they would arrive in time. Officer Mercer remained near the reception desk. The confidence that had filled his voice earlier had disappeared. Every few minutes he glanced toward the conference room. Every few minutes he looked away again. Eventually he walked over and stopped beside Nia's chair. How are you holding up? He asked quietly. Nia looked up. The question surprised her. Earlier, he had barely listened at all. I do not know, she admitted. Mercer nodded slowly. For a moment he seemed older than before. Tired. I should have taken your report more seriously. Nia did not answer. She was too exhausted to be angry and too worried to feel satisfied. The silence between them stretched for several seconds. Then Mercer spoke again. Sometimes we see so many false alarms that we stop recognizing the real ones. Nia lowered her eyes toward the floor. My grandmother always said people deserve to be heard. The officer looked away. She sounds like a wise woman. Across the room, the conference room door opened. Helen stepped out carrying the flash drive. Her expression had changed. Not fearful, not relieved, focused, like someone staring at the final piece of a puzzle. Two additional investigators emerged behind her. One carried a folder thick with printed documents. Another held a tablet displaying several photographs. They moved quickly through the station. Helen approached Nia and knelt beside her chair. We reviewed the contents. Nia's heart immediately began racing. What was on it? Helen glanced toward the investigators before answering. Records, financial transfers, internal reports, correspondence. Nia understood only part of that. Is it important? Helen's eyes softened. Very. The answer came without hesitation. A long breath escaped Nia's lungs. For weeks her grandmother had collected information. For weeks she had trusted that the truth mattered. Now that truth was finally being seen. Helen gently placed a hand on Nia's shoulder. There is something else. Nia looked up. What? Helen stood and exchanged a glance with one of the investigators. The station seemed to hold its breath. Even Officer Mercer stopped moving. Then Helen smiled for the first time all evening. It was small, careful, but real. About 30 minutes ago, she said softly, someone matching your grandmother's description contacted a secure government hotline from a location less than 20 miles from here. For a second, Nia could not move. The words echoed through her mind louder than the rain, louder than the phones, louder than every doubt she had carried for the last 3 days. Someone matching your grandmother's description. Less than 20 miles away. Alive. The station suddenly felt brighter, warmer. Around her, investigators exchanged quick glances and began moving with renewed purpose. One agent stepped aside to make a phone call. Another pulled up a digital map on a tablet. Tiny blue markers appeared across the screen. Helen remained beside Nia, her expression calm but determined. Are you sure it was her? Nia asked. Helen nodded carefully. The caller used a verification phrase that only your grandmother and our office knew. Relief flooded through Nia so quickly that she almost cried. She pressed both hands against the edge of her chair and looked toward the rain-streaked windows. Somewhere beyond the dark streets and glowing traffic lights, Evelyn Carter was still out there, still fighting, still trying to come home. Can I talk to her? Nia asked. Helen's smile softened. Not yet. We are trying to determine her exact location. Nearby, Officer Mercer listened silently. The change in the room was impossible to ignore. Earlier, Nia had been treated like a child with an overactive imagination. Now experienced investigators were organizing resources because of a single phone call she had chosen to make. Mercer lowered his eyes for a moment before walking toward Helen. Inspector, he said quietly. If there is anything my department can do to assist, Helen looked at him. There is. Mercer straightened. Name it. Help us find Evelyn Carter. The officer nodded immediately. No hesitation. No argument. Across the station, officers who had barely noticed Nia before were suddenly reviewing reports and checking databases. The atmosphere had shifted completely. Nia watched it happen in real time. One person had listened, then another, and now the entire room was moving. A few minutes later, one of the investigators hurried across the lobby carrying a tablet. Inspector Graves. Helen turned. What is it? The investigator pointed to the screen. We traced the hotline connection. Nia rose from her chair. Helen stepped closer to examine the information. Her eyes widened slightly. You found it. We found the building. The investigator nodded. An old community center on the east side. Nia immediately recognized the location. Her grandmother volunteered there twice a month helping seniors complete paperwork and applications. She knows that place, Nia said. Helen looked at her. Are you sure? Yes, ma'am. The investigator zoomed in on the map. Security cameras show a woman entering about 40 minutes before the hotline call. Nia's heart raced. 40 minutes. Not weeks ago. Not days ago. Tonight. Helen closed the folder in her hands and turned toward her team. Move. The response was immediate. Chairs rolled back. Doors opened. Radios crackled softly. Outside, flashing reflections danced across the wet pavement as government vehicles prepared to leave. Helen looked down at Nia one last time. You did something very important today. Nia blinked. I just called a phone number. Helen shook her head. No. Her voice was gentle but firm. You refused to stop looking when everyone else stopped listening. As the investigators headed toward the exit, Nia stood beneath the bright station lights watching them disappear into the rainy night. And for the first time since her grandmother vanished, hope felt stronger than fear. Nearly an hour passed before the station doors opened again. By then the rain had stopped completely. The pavement outside reflected the glow of streetlights like sheets of polished glass. Nia sat quietly near the front window, watching every vehicle that entered the parking lot. Each passing minute felt longer than the last. Officer Mercer remained nearby, helping coordinate incoming updates. Several times he offered Nia water or a snack. Several times she politely declined. Her attention never drifted far from the entrance. Then a government SUV turned into the lot. The vehicle rolled to a stop beneath the bright lights outside. Every conversation inside the station seemed to pause at once. Nia stood so quickly that her chair slid backward across the floor. The passenger door opened first. Inspector Helen Graves stepped out. She exchanged a few words with someone still inside the vehicle. Then she turned toward the station entrance. A smile appeared on her face. Not the careful professional smile Nia had seen before. A genuine one. The doors opened. Cool night air swept into the lobby. Helen stepped aside, and standing behind her was Evelyn Carter. For a second, Nia could not breathe. Her grandmother looked tired. Her silver hair was slightly messy. Her cardigan hung loosely over her shoulders. But she was standing. She was smiling. She was here. Grandma. Nia ran forward. Evelyn dropped the small bag she had been carrying and opened her arms. The distance between them disappeared instantly. Nia wrapped both arms around her grandmother and buried her face against her shoulder. Evelyn held her tightly. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. "I am so sorry." Tears filled Nia's eyes. "I thought you were gone." Evelyn gently brushed a hand through her hair. "I know." Around them, the station remained unusually quiet. Even the officers who had never met Evelyn seemed moved by the reunion. Inspector Graves allowed them a moment before stepping forward. "Mrs. Carter helped us verify the documents on the flash drive," she explained. "The information was accurate." Evelyn nodded. A lot of people trusted those community programs. I could not stay silent when the numbers stopped making sense. Nia looked up. "You were trying to help people." "Yes." Evelyn smiled softly. "Just like you did." Nearby, Officer Mercer slowly approached. His expression carried none of the confidence from earlier that afternoon. He stopped a few feet away. "Mrs. Carter." Evelyn turned toward him. "Officer." Mercer took a breath. "I owe both of you an apology." The station became silent again. "When Nia came here, I did not listen." He looked directly at the little girl. "You were telling the truth. And I treated you like your concerns did not matter." Nia studied him quietly. The apology felt sincere. Not because of the words. Because of the way he said them. Mercer continued. "I should have done better." Evelyn placed a hand on Nia's shoulder. "What do you think?" she asked softly. Nia glanced between them. Then she remembered something her grandmother often said. "People learn when someone gives them the chance." "Thank you for saying that," Nia replied. Relief crossed Mercer's face. Helen watched the exchange and smiled. Outside, the clouds had finally begun to part. Moonlight slipped through the windows and stretched across the floor. For the first time in days, the weight that had followed Nia everywhere began to lift. The search was over. Her grandmother was safe, and the truth had finally been heard. The next morning arrived with clear skies and golden sunlight spilling across the city. For the first time in days, Nia woke up without fear waiting beside her bed. The small apartment smelled like fresh coffee and warm biscuits. From the kitchen came the familiar sound of humming, a sound she had worried she might never hear again. Nia followed it and stopped in the doorway. Evelyn Carter stood at the counter wearing her favorite blue cardigan, moving slowly but smiling as she prepared breakfast. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other. Then Evelyn opened her arms and Nia crossed the room in seconds. The embrace felt different from the night before. Not desperate, not frightened, peaceful. The kind of hug that reminded both of them they were finally home. Later that afternoon, Inspector Helen Graves visited the apartment. Sunlight streamed through the living room window while neighborhood children played outside. Helen explained that the evidence on the flash drive had helped investigators protect funding intended for schools, food assistance programs, and senior services. The truth Evelyn had uncovered would help countless families. When Helen finished speaking, she looked directly at Nia. "None of this would have happened if you had given up." Nia lowered her eyes shyly. "I was just trying to find my grandmother." Helen smiled. Sometimes doing the right thing starts with loving someone enough not to quit. A week later, the community center hosted a small gathering. Nothing fancy. Folding chairs. Homemade desserts. Families talking beneath strings of lights. People came to thank Evelyn for her courage. Many thanked the investigators as well. But what surprised Nia most was seeing Officer Ryan Mercer walk through the front doors carrying a small bouquet of flowers. Conversations softened as he approached. He stopped in front of Evelyn and Nia. "I wanted to apologize again," he said. "And I wanted to thank both of you for reminding me why listening matters." Evelyn accepted the flowers with a warm smile. "We all learn," she replied. Mercer nodded. Then he looked at Nia. "You taught an entire station something important." Nia did not know what to say. She simply smiled. As evening settled over the neighborhood, people slowly drifted home. The last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of gold and orange. Nia and Evelyn remained outside for a while, sitting together on a wooden bench beneath a maple tree. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. Children laughed somewhere in the distance. Cars rolled quietly along nearby streets. Life moved forward. Evelyn reached over and squeezed Nia's hand. "You know," she said softly, "being brave does not mean you are never scared." Nia looked up. "What does it mean?" Evelyn gazed toward the horizon where the sun was disappearing behind the rooftops. "It means you keep going even when nobody believes you." Nia thought about the rain, the station, the phone call, and the long nights of uncertainty. Then she leaned her head against her grandmother's shoulder. Neither spoke again. They did not need to. The evening light wrapped around them like a blanket while the wind moved gently through the trees. Somewhere beyond the fading sunlight, the world continued turning. But in that quiet moment, justice felt less like a victory and more like a simple truth. One voice can be ignored. One child can be underestimated. Yet sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to give up for the truth to finally be heard.